Hello. So let me start with a question. Do you trust your family and friends? It's an interactive speech, so you guys think about it. Would you lend them $5, only being given their promise that you will receive the money back? $5. Who would? That's good. That's good. What about $5,000? Would you lend them this money, only being given their promise that they will give you the money back? Okay. Still, yeah, I can see some trust here. Okay. But let's think bigger. Would you lend $5,000 to a person you don't know anything about? Maybe living in a totally different country, speaking a different language, only, again, being given their promise that you will receive the money. As you can see, the situation gets slightly more complicated here. Our belief that the other person is trustworthy is no longer an option, since we don't know anything about them. And, at this point, we have an option, of course. We can consult a third-party institution. What I mean by that is something like a court or a bank. There are many benefits resulting from consulting this type of institution. We no longer encounter the problem of trust. The third-party organization does this for us by legitimating and verifying the other person. So, we can relax, sit down, and wait for the deal to be signed. Pretty simple. But, there are some issues with that. Firstly, there is a problem of corruption. And the ability to trust public institutions is constantly questioned. Corruption threatens our personal interests in a number of ways. So, the intervention of a third party takes time and money as well. And also, third-party institutions often struggle with inefficient management, which has a tremendous impact on their performance. Also, the intervention may cost a lot of money, and because of the bureaucracy, we would have to wait for the deal to be signed for months or even years. As you can see, this scenario is not necessarily sufficient. It pretty much sucks. So what can we do? Well, we meet here to discuss smart contracts. And I will show you that a smart contract is a great idea that can resolve the situation. So I believe at this point, you might have heard about blockchain. If not, or you're not sure, then I believe you must have heard about Bitcoin. It's pretty viral, I guess. So the way Bitcoin, among many other cryptocurrencies, works is that it allows to make peer-to-peer transactions using the decentralized network. And that network consists of interconnected blocks. Each block stores data, and they overall create a chain. And this is why we call it blockchain, because of those connections. And what is important, once you input a data into a blockchain, it's almost impossible to change it. What we really value about the blockchains is that they have a very high degree of privacy. It's pretty much impossible for a hacker to access your information. The whole operation happens in this decentralized environment. So I said Bitcoin uses blockchain to operate. However, decentralized finance, DeFi, as we call it, is not the only way in which you can use the pretty much exciting features of a decentralized network. And one of those ways is smart contracts. So the idea of smart contracts was first proposed in 1994 by a computer scientist and legal scholar, Nick Szabo. And he proposed the idea of self-executing decentralized agreements between parties in a digital space. However, it was only in the 90s, and it took the creation of blockchain technology and the launch of Ethereum network in 2015 to actually make this virtual scenario of agreements a reality. So we're getting a little abstract here now, so let me find an example. Suppose you want to buy a car, and you want to buy a car from a private owner. It's cheaper that way, and the owner claims he almost never used it. So you're ready to spend your money. You even already see yourself in the car, smiling, wearing sunglasses. Surprisingly, conveniently, you recently heard a very smart TED Talk, and nerdy-looking girl tried to convince you that you should start using smart contracts in human agreements. So you call the car owner. Let's call him, for the purpose of this example, Mr. John McShady, and inform him about it. You make an agreement via smart contracts, and the code becomes the final arbiter of the result of your interaction. Multiple terms can be written into a code. In this example, we might think that you want to legally secure the transfer of the ownership of John's car. You write it into the code, and once the rules of the transactions are fulfilled, the ownership of John's car is automatically transferred to you. And you can do it with a variety of types of assets. This is just an example. So as you can see, the whole operation did not require any legal professionals, or no organizations or institutions have been involved. Code worked as law and enforced the rules of the transactions without the possibility of human error. Of course, you'll say smart contracts cannot be implemented on a global level yet, which is right, of course, I agree. There are many problems with that. Firstly, the implementation process is complicated because it also requires really high level of technological advancement, as well as some kind of changes in jurisdiction. In order to implement it, this, as you know, because of the whole politics around the world and different systems and levels of development, this can be really hard to achieve. I agree. However, given the current pace of development and technological advancement, we might start to seriously consider the idea that this scenario of virtual jurisdiction, commonly referred to code is law. There was a really interesting paper about this, by the way. It's called Code is Law. We might think that it could become a reality within the time of our lifetimes. Thank you very much.